South Alabama and Texas State kicking off the final weekend of the regular season on Black Friday. It's Locked On Sunbelt.
You are Locked On Sunbelt, your daily podcast on the Sunbelt Conference, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, Dave Schultz, Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Hopefully everyone had a fantastic Thanksgiving watching pro football, and now we get to watch a little college football today and tomorrow. All right, we will get to, if we have time, Marshall and JMU, along with the Cajuns and Monroe. We really did a deep dive on two of those teams anyway, so we'll see if we get to those at the end. Georgia Southern was hosting rival App State, and of course, App State, Coastal Carolina, and ULM still fighting for bowl berths. So we will get to as many of the games as we can. First off, South Alabama playing Texas State, and make no mistake about it, this game is on Friday because half of South Alabama fans are Auburn fans, and half of them, the other half, are Alabama fans. I seem to remember one year the Iron Bowl changed the time or whatever it was, and they moved the game time for the South Alabama game. But now this game has been scheduled for Friday. It's not the first time they've done this. So South Alabama hosting Texas State in the final game of the regular season. South Alabama has already got to a bowl game by beating the Cajuns and then taking down Southern Miss. And, I mean, they have a chance for 8-9 wins this season. They take down Texas State, and they will advance to a bowl game and have a chance to get their 9th victory. So it has been a roller coaster season, to say the least. Gia Lopez has had a fantastic year. Fluff Bothwell among the rushing leaders in touchdown, the true freshman. And again, eventually we're going to get to this. It's not going to be this time, but we will get to it. I'm hoping, as Sunbelt fans, as a Jaguars fan, that they both stay in Mobile, because something along those lines will eventually come. The big key to this ball game is, what's Texas State going to do? All right, Texas State has played their way out of a chance to win the division. South Alabama, I should mention, can still win the division with a Cajuns loss and obviously a Jaguars win. The queen of the Sunbelt tiebreaker, Kara Ritchie from, I believe that's going to say 90. From the ticket up in Jonesboro. She's also part of the Arkansas State Red Wolves pre- and post-game show. She figured it out what South Alabama has to do. Beat Texas State by 80. Louisiana lose to UL Monroe. Georgia Southern lose to App State, and Marshall lose at JMU by 100. That's not only to win the West, but that would be for South Alabama to host the Sunbelt Championship. You can check out her X feed or Twitter feed, and it was pretty funny what she came up with. But South Alabama can win the West still, as simple as a Cajuns loss and a South Alabama win. But Texas State has been eliminated, coming off really what has got to be their most disappointing loss of the season. They bounced back nicely from losing to the Cajuns. That game was built up for a long time. They lost 2 in a row. They lost to Old Dominion and then the Cajuns. Then they beat UL Monroe pretty good. They tore apart Southern Miss and just fell flat at home against Georgia State, 52-44. And the game wasn't that close. Texas State scored late to make it a 1-score ball game. And so this is what comes up with that. We talked about it, about ULM. We talked about it with Troy. Will they have the maturity to go out there and compete, knowing it's probably the last time for them will ever suit up and play football? But you want to go out and give your best effort. Losing is one thing. That's part of it. And the athletes know more about that than we certainly do. But when you don't play very well, that's when it gets to be disappointing. And that game spun out of control. Again, Texas State made it late. Later on, Texas State, I believe, is actually favored in this game. Texas State is favored by 1. The line came out, and South Alabama was favored by a couple. And then all of a sudden, like the next day, Craig Stevenson is like, now Texas State is favored. I'm going to go South Alabama. I think South Alabama is going to come out The game is at 3:30, so it's an odd time on Black Friday. We'll see who's at the ball game. Going to depend on the weather, obviously, but it certainly should be a good football game. I am going to take South Alabama in this one. All right, let's head over to Coastal Carolina and Georgia State. Georgia State, outside of Vanderbilt, coming off their best win of the year, going into San Marcos and taking down the Texas State Bobcats. Christian Veilleux bouncing back with no Zach Gibson playing, leading the Panthers to that big victory. And all of a sudden, Georgia State's got 3 wins. Georgia State just picks up their first win in conference. They snapped a 7-game losing streak. And obviously, they're looking forward to finish up strong at home against Coastal Carolina. Whereas Coastal Carolina has had this, again, another one of these up and down seasons. They started out 3-0 and winning 4 of their first 5 ball games. Only loss was to Virginia, but then they got slaughtered by James Madison 39-7. They got beat late by the Cajuns, a little Ben Woldridge, I believe Terrence Carter connection that put that game away, 34-24. Then a little embarrassed against Troy, losing by 14, 38-24. They bounced back with an impressive win against App State, but then lost at Marshall 31-19 and did not really show up at all against Georgia Southern. Yet, with a win on Saturday against Georgia State, they will go bowling, and that will be 2 bowls in a row for Tim Beck. Again, you got to find the quarterback. I don't know if it's Noah Kim. Ethan Vasco has been up and down, has not played as well as he did last year. And so we will see what happens with that position. And again, anytime we talk quarterback, you just look at Florida State and see the difference between having a quarterback and having not, and how important that is. We always point to Southern Miss. In this case, we'll see what Troy's quarterback situation is. We'll see what the Cajuns' quarterback situation is. There are rumors flying all over the internet, so it must be true on who or who may not be transferring to the Cajuns. And then, of course, you got Christian Veilleux and Zach Gibson. I think Zach could be the guy. We shall see, but he's banged up. So that is an issue. But I'm going to take Coastal Carolina in this one, see if they can go on the road. They are a different team on the road. Again, they're 5-6, 2-5 in conference. Let's see here. They did beat Temple on the road and Jacksonville State. Actually, Jacksonville State may be their most impressive win this season. And that opened up the year, 55-27. Jacksonville State replacing a bunch of guys. They've actually had a good year. They've bounced back. But after winning 4 of their first 5 ball games, they have lost 5 of their last 6. So I'm going to see if Coastal Carolina is going to go on the road and take down Georgia State. Again, Del McGee is building something. Again, there's a correlation between doing a great job recruiting and doing a good job of getting guys to transfer in. And those things take a couple of years, besides the guys who got to come in this year. And of course, Del McGee has talked about the finances of Georgia State and all the fans that don't come to support the team, and they need to figure out a way to draw something in that big stadium where they do play football. Everyone's got to sit in like 3 sections, so at least it makes it look like there's people somewhere. Got to come up with some sort of idea. So I have South Alabama taking down Texas State, and I have Coastal Carolina going into Atlanta to take down Georgia State. All right, we will talk Georgia Southern taking on App and a few more ball games when we come back after I tell you about Game Time. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. We're planning on doing this, planning on getting those Duke Louisville tickets. Duke is coming to Louisville in a couple of Sundays, so I hope to go to that ball game, and I'm going to use Game Time to get those tickets. With those priority Game Time Picks, curation makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, etc. All in pricing. When you toggle this feature, it shows the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. And you get to see where you're sitting. You get those panoramic view of your seat in the app before you buy. And Game Time has the lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Game Time ticket coverage is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE, Locked On College, for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. All right, Dave Schultz, Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day. Getting ready for a little Black Friday and final weekend of the regular season action. We talked about South Alabama still has an outside shot at the Sunbelt West. Georgia Southern has the same shot in the Sunbelt East. They lost to Troy, so they gave way to Marshall. They need Marshall to lose to JMU, which is obviously not out of the question, and they need to beat App State. This is one of the great rivalries well before the Sunbelt, and we'll see if it happens. I remember a couple of years ago when Georgia Southern beat App State. Obviously, Clay Helton has been in a bunch of huge games with USC, and it just seemed like unadulterated pure joy when Georgia Southern beat App State a couple of years ago. And so it's a huge ball game. Georgia Southern 7-4, still have that outside shot at the division. And I think, let me see here. I think that ball game is Georgia Southern's playing 6 p.m. Eastern time. Marshall and James Madison are playing at 8 o'clock. So Georgia Southern can put the pressure on Marshall with a victory. They could also do the opposite. They could lose, and then the pressure is off, and Marshall will have clinched. Obviously, another one of those roller coaster seasons in the Sun Belt coming up. Just short against Boise. Actually had the lead a couple of times against Boise State, but fall 56-45. Go out to Nevada and play some good defense. Get a couple of stops. Hang on to defeat the Wolfpack 20-17. Beat South Carolina State 42-14. Upended by Ole Miss. Okay. Then beat Georgia State and then beat Marshall in a huge comeback win. What was it? Like a 20-point ball game or something like that. And somehow they managed. I want to get this. Like 5 minutes left to go, and it was 23-3. Yeah, 23-5. It was 23-3 with they got a safety with 7:22 to go, or 6:45 to go. It was 23-3 with 6:45 to go. So it was a 20-point ball game. And with J.C. French goes out, Dexter Williams II comes in, leads them to 21 unanswered points and a thrilling 24-23 victory. Marshall with the meltdown in that one. And that was obviously the huge win for Georgia Southern. They do beat James Madison, and they look like they're on their way, and then they just don't show up against Old Dominion. Got blown out by ODU 47-19. Unbelievable. And they're getting blown out again by South Alabama, and they come back to beat South Alabama on the road 34-30. Then they laid their egg, losing at home to Troy 28-20. They do upend Coastal Carolina 26-6 to still have that shot in the Eastern Division, but we shall see. App State, it's been a brutal season for App State. Troy Aguilar, actually the conference's leading passer in terms of yardage per game, but he's thrown way too many interceptions this year compared to last. We know that the Liberty game was canceled due to the storm going through Boone, North Carolina. Wishing everybody, hopefully, in that area of the country and in Carolina, finishes up 24 on a high note. And we know that, Sean Clark is probably on the hot seat, whether he comes back or not. We'll have to wait and see. It just hasn't gone the way that App State was hoping. Having said that, they have won 3 of their last 4. They beat Georgia State. They beat Old Dominion. They did lose to Coastal Carolina, and they took apart James Madison last week in the snow. And so all of a sudden, you beat Georgia Southern. You've won 4 out of your last 5. You go 6-6. You're going to a bowl game. And on top of that, you ruined your rival's season. And so a lot to play for for App State. I'm going to take the home team, Georgia Southern, in this one. Don't think they're favored by all that much. I could be wrong. No, it's 2.5. That's a lot of respect for App State, actually. That is a lot of respect. So generally speaking, if this game was in lovely Boone, North Carolina, App State would be favored. So I find that interesting. I will take Georgia Southern. I will not be surprised if App State wins this football game. All right, let's do Old Dominion and Arkansas State. It is a tough road for Old Dominion. A lot of woulda, coulda, shoulda this season. They had a shot to beat South Carolina, and how impressive would that have been, losing 23-19. Too many turnovers in that ball game. Lost to East Carolina 20-14. All right, got blown out by Virginia Tech. That happens. Beat Bowling Green. Was leading Coastal Carolina by a lot, then fell behind by a lot, and then lost by 8. Of course, we know that ODU is always in those one-score ball games. Do beat Georgia State by 7, of course. Then surprises Texas State 24-14. I mean, Texas State has laid a couple eggs this year. And then they beat Georgia Southern 47-19. They go to App and they fall. They can't take down James Madison, and they had the back and forth with Marshall. So they have all of a sudden lost 3 in a row where they had a real outside shot at getting a bowl game. The problem is it's at App State. It's against James Madison. It's against Marshall. And then the last game is at Arkansas State. So that is tough for Old Dominion. I'm a big Ricky Ronnie fan. We're hoping he comes back because if he leaves, there's a good shot Colton Joseph is going to leave with him. That's the only thing. And he has been a really good quarterback this year for ODU. Meanwhile, Arkansas State has had a real solid season. I'm not sure anybody thought that they would compete for the Western Division in the Sun Belt. Jalen Rayner coming into his second year, true sophomore year. Start out 2-0 with wins over Central Arkansas and Tulsa, and then lose to Michigan and Iowa State. Okay, no big deal there. They beat South Alabama at home, but then got embarrassed by Texas State. They beat Southern Miss and they beat Troy, games that they should win, but then got embarrassed by the Cajuns, 55-19. But then they've won 2 in a row. So basically, they've beaten everybody that they should have beaten this year. They've gotten blown out a couple of times, but I don't think they have lost a ball game that they should have won. And this is a ball game that they should win. Jalen Rayner has taken that step to where he is not allowing the last, the first 3.5 quarters to matter, winning close ball games. Again, Troy was by 3. Let's see here. South Alabama was by 2. Those were late. Central Arkansas was 3. Tulsa was 4. He's done a good job. We now want to see him next year kind of take that step to where he's being consistently good on a regular basis, which is what consistently good means, instead of trying to pull a rabbit out of his hat at the end of the ball game. We want to see that growth. But they're 7-4. Arkansas State beats ODU. That's 8 wins. They win a bowl game. That's 9 wins. That's a great job by Butch Jones. He had a couple of really good recruiting classes. It's going to take time. It does. And now we're seeing the fruits of that labor. I'm going to take Arkansas State in that ball game. Let's see what that line is. It is, how about this one? Am I seeing that right? I'm taking Arkansas State in this one. ODU is favored by 4.5. Wow. Home dog. Did not see that one coming. I'm taking Arkansas State not only to cover, but to win. That would be a shocking loss if they lose at home to ODU. All right. I think we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh, no. Did we do all the games? Oh, we did all the games. All right. So we can come back, talk about App State, Coastal, ULM a little bit more. And, of course, we do have the Cajuns taking on ULM and Marshall and JMU. We've talked about Marshall and the Cajuns a lot this week. Obviously, that whole situation with Charles Huff is just fascinating. And maybe we're going to find out, Sunday or Monday, depending on what happens on Saturdays. The whole football program, depending, is if Marshall wins this football game against JMU and plays in the championship. Do they have to win the championship? It's crazy. Could they win the Sun Belt championship and Charles Huff say, thanks, I'm going somewhere else, because someone's going to want him. Somebody even put him in the North Carolina mix. So we will do all of that when we come back after I tell you about FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, Dave Schultz, Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day. Your teams every day. All right, so we do have App State, Coastal Carolina, and ULM still with a chance to go bowling. So we have 7 teams in the Sun Belt that have qualified for the bowl games. They will all be going bowling. You could get 10. I think Coastal's going to beat Georgia State. That'll be 8. I would be surprised if App State and ULM trip up Georgia Southern and the Cajuns. Getting back to this again, Charles Huff and Marshall and Southern Miss mess. It is fascinating, right? And again, I'm not a big believer in coaches being fired. It's not my thing. I think out of a decade of doing this, the only time that I advocated for a coach to be let go was Johnny Jones in LSU when they quit and didn't want to play in the NIT because Ben Simmons wasn't going to play in the NIT, and they had just gotten blown out in the SEC tournament. But other guys are going to play. They were banged up and they were sick. But if those 7 guys want to play, let them go play. So that was where I advocated for him to be let go. Didn't get let go. I think he had a 20-game losing streak the next year, and then the Will Wade era started. So I'm not a big fan on firing. Obviously, when Will Hall gets let go, there's nothing you can do to defend that because they're just not winning and they were bad. Charles Huff has gone to 4 bowl games, right? He's been there 3 years. He's gone to 3 bowl games. He's going to go to a 4th one this year. He's fighting for a division title. Go on the road, beat JMU. You get a division title. I think we told, I think it was a different podcast. It wasn't my podcast. Maybe I did tell Lou Creasy, but it was a different podcast. Run with the Herd. If Marshall beats JMU, Huff's got to get a contract. Like that's going to be announced on Monday, right? You don't want to be in the NFL mixture, so announce it Monday and get it over with, right? Whatever it is. But if he loses, does Southern Miss offer him the job? Does he accept the job from Southern Miss? And you look on the comments, I'm sure everybody knows who's watching this. I posted in all the fan groups on Facebook, and it really is 50-50. Some people like him, some people don't. It's a fascinating deal there. Him and the administration don't get along. I presume that's because he doesn't have a contract, going into his final year. It's very abnormal for that to be the case. So there's a lot riding in that game, and I just find it fascinating. Again, you could have openings at ODU and App State. They did mention Bob Chesney's name. I wasn't the first person to do that, but Bob Chesney's name was floated out there for Carolina. So was Charles Huff. And they're even talking about some guys like leaving the SEC and the Big Ten to go to an easier conference in the ACC. So we'll see what happens. But obviously there's a lot more on the line than just winning football games this weekend. All right, so let's talk about the Cajuns and ULM, and then we'll do Marshall, JMU. Cajuns have what they work for. This is exactly what the Cajuns have worked for. Very close, as someone pointed out, to almost having a perfect season. At the same time, I could go through, 3 or 4 things that they got away with, right? They got, Southern Miss had a couple of bad calls go against them in favor of the Cajuns. Wake Forest misses a field goal, and Texas State has a pass that's tipped that turns into an interception. All right, so is that a good play by the Cajuns? You bet. But the Cajuns were close to losing 2 or 3 more ball games, just as close as they were to winning the 2 games that they lost. Tulane with the pick 6 and a kickoff return, and just not scoring and kicking too many field goals against South Alabama. But this is what they wanted. Mike Desimo has talked about it in the spring. He talked about it at SEC Media Days. He talked about it in the fall. This was the team. He knew how good they were, and he's got them right where they want them, with a chance to win the Sun Belt West and most likely host. Again, my head hurts with all of that stuff. It's hilarious, but not really. And as Carol Ritchie says, she's hoping it comes down to a coin toss, which is ridiculous, but whatever. So everything is there for the Cajuns. It has been a house of horrors. As Kevin Foote mentioned, Cajuns have had some really good teams going to ULM and come up short and just eke out victories. This is a nationally televised game. It's at 11 a.m. ULM is coming off a 5-game losing streak. They were 5-1. Now they need to win this ball game just to get to a bowl game and avoid a losing regular season. It has not been a good run for hasn't been a good run for the Warhawks. Oddly enough, they have that number one pass defense, probably mostly because teams are just running against them, right? I think Auburn did a lot of passing against them because they could, and they did. But we'll see. Teams rack up the yardage. They just can't stop anybody on the ground. Cajuns haven't been able to run all that well. George Jackson, the right tackle, has been banged up, and they are down to, one scholarship running back right now. The other two probably not going to play. We'll see if Zylan Perry plays. Bill Davis will be leading the way. Again, I'm going to take the Cajuns. The line is down to 9.5. You want to take ULM on the spread? Okay. Going on the road and trying to win by double digits is not easy. That doesn't generally happen. You can go all pros on you. I know it was a crazy ending, but the Lions should have blown out the Bears, and yet it came down to what it did come down to. So it doesn't matter where it is. It's tough to win by double digits. And Detroit was at home. They kicked a bunch of field goals, couldn't put touchdowns on the board. They were fortunate to get away with that one. So I'll say ULM will cover the 9.5. Cajuns will win that ball game. Meanwhile, Marshall, same thing, going on the road, taking on JMU. Obviously, different level of competition. All right, JMU is very good. They did not play very well last week against App State. Bob Chesney has done a great job taking over for Kurt Cignetti with a huge amount of turnover. Alonzo Barnett III, very much into the offensive player of the year category, Sunbelt player of the year. I don't think he'll win it because JMU came up a little bit short. That's why I think Mike Green may be your winner for Marshall if they win it. But that's been a great story. And Marshall has, went with the two quarterbacks. They bounced back from that brutal loss against Georgia Southern. I presume JMU is favored in this one by 3.5. I'm going to take the road team. I'm going to take Marshall. I want to see if Marshall, same thing, is JMU mature to bounce back and finish up strong? They can still have a 10-win season, right? They're going bowling. They've already got 8 wins. They beat Marshall and they win a bowl game. That's 10. That's a great season for Bob Chesney in his first year of FBS. I know he's got a decade worth of head coaching experience, presumably. And again, you have to worry about it. Alonzo Barnett III, is he coming back? You can fill in the holes that you have. And I just think JMU is still off and running. They go from one really good coach that was at a lower level to another really good coach that was at a lower level. However, I'm going to take Marshall in this one. I'm going chalk for the two division leaders. No way it's going to end up that way because they don't call it the Fun Belt for nothing, folks. So we shall see. So to see if I can do this off the top of my head, to recap, I'm taking South Alabama on Friday to beat Texas State to win and to cover. Coastal Carolina is going to go into Georgia State, into Atlanta, and beat the Panthers. I did miss one, didn't I? I did miss one. So I missed a Troy and Southern Miss. Let me wrap it up with this. I apologize. I thought that was South and it was Southern. So my mistake, just on the tabs on the computer. Southern Miss 1-10, obviously a brutal season. They're right in the middle, apparently, of the Charles Huff situation. Troy may be turning the corner. They've put up a bunch of points the last 3 weeks. As Kevin Foote said, that game against the Cajuns was much closer than that 51-30 ball game would indicate. They put up 31 points against Arkansas State in a loss. They put up 28 points in a win against Coastal. They put up 28 points in a win against Georgia Southern, and they put up 30 points in a loss against the Cajuns. I don't think this game is going to be very close. I think Troy will win it. My guy, Reed Stringer, a little emotional, looking for a little cohesiveness. Although Troy is 17.5-point favorites. That's a lot. That's a lot. All right. Admittedly, they've been really good. Caldwell has been especially good like the last few ball games. Let's see what, I mean, he was ridiculous. Did throw 3 interceptions against Arkansas State. Wasn't great against Coastal Carolina, only 9 of 16, but he did have 2 touchdowns. Against Georgia Southern, 26 of 32 for 2 touchdowns. And against the Cajuns, 26 of 42 with 4 touchdowns, but he had 2 costly interceptions. So again, Caldwell was the third string quarterback, 12 touchdowns and 8 interceptions. And 3 of those ball games have multiple turnovers. So that's going to kill you every time. I think Troy will win this ball game. I probably wouldn't bet on it. Wouldn't be surprised if Troy was a blowout. But you could easily see this as, 31-17 as well. So I don't think that's going to happen. I think Troy is going to win the ball game, but I'm not sure I would be laying the 17.5 points. But I do think Troy is heading in the right direction. We'll see who the quarterback is next year. I'm not sure it's going to be Caldwell. Goose Crowder going to come back, and we'll see how that happens. All right, so I do apologize there. I thought it was a different team, but it was Southern Miss and Troy. I did take Arkansas State to take down ODU, although ODU is favored. That's kind of weird. Going on the road to Jonesboro. Cajuns take down ULM. I'll take ULM to cover. Marshall beats JMU, and Georgia Southern over App State. All right, we will have a full recap on Monday. I did travel for the holiday, but I will be back. I have to work over the weekend, so it's kind of a hop, skip, and a jump to our nation's capital, and I will be back in Louisville and at Jim Beam on Saturday to work. Come on by for a tour. We'd love to have you. All right, so thank you so much. We are, what are we up to? Almost 1,654 subscribers. We had a great week, and turns out that Coach's Carousel is good content. People are interested. Southern Miss fans want to know who their coach is going to be. If it is Charles Huff, that leaves another opening. What does ODU do? What does App State do? Does Bob Chesney get a bigger gig? We shall see. Plenty to go over on Monday, and I'm sure there will be breaking news all week. So again, thanks very much. Hopefully you had a good Thanksgiving. Appreciate all of your support. Have a great weekend. Enjoy the football you've been watching and listening to Locked On Sunbelt, your teams every day.